Well, welcome everybody to what I am thinking of as Energy Security Power Hour. So we are going to start with a fireside chat with Lieutenant General Helwig, who is the Deputy Commander at Transcom, and I will let him tell you about that in just a minute here, and then we will transition to a panel discussion that I hope you all will enjoy. So Lieutenant General Helwig, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and I thought we could start with just a little bit of a primer. What are you doing at Transcom? Can you explain your mission set? It is vast, it is consequential. Introduce us to Transcom.
Sure, thanks Meredith, thanks. And appreciate being here. This is our first time really in the Global Energy Forum, so it's exciting. So what is Transcom? So as many know, the Department of Defense in the United States, we have combatant commands. Some of them are geographical, so they're tied to different parts of the world like EUCOM or Indo-PACOM, and then some are functional. And so the Transcom is a functional command, so it's got global responsibility, and basically anything that moves in the Department of Defense moves in some way through Transcom. So rough order of magnitude, about 200 rail cars on any given day, about 400 sorties of aircraft that move cargo, and about 40 that move fuel to refuel fighters and other aircraft. A large network of ports and port activity that we do. We move patients around globally, and then roughly 15 ships are moving under Transcoms in the Department of Defense on any given day as well. So that's kind of the scope and magnitude, and so you're like, okay, well, that's great. Well, what does that have to do with global energy? And so recently, within the last 2 years, another mission that's passed on to Transcom has been to also be the global integrator for energy. So we're the global bulk fuel manager for the Department of Defense as well. And so that's been a new mission that's kind of evolved over the last 2 years, and we're really excited to be doing that as well.
Thank you. And so bulk fuel, it is what's going to make everything work when we need it to work in order to assure mission success. And so that's operations around the world, that is the day-to-day, but in every sense very consequential. Can you talk about what it means to have this new mission of managing bulk fuel? What does it mean to have that visibility over the entirety of this requirement? And how are you thinking about it in an operational context?
Yeah, so, the Department of Defense runs on fuel like any modern military. Fuel is a huge part of the equation. And so being the bulk fuel integrator or bulk fuel manager gives us the mission to ensure not just that the amount of fuel is available, but it's the network that's got to be built, the delivery of that fuel, the integration of the fuel with industry across those other transportation modes that I mentioned earlier. We have a lot of industry interaction, so this is kind of a natural fit with that as well. But it's really about taking that problem set of getting the right fuel to the right place at the right time globally. That's fundamentally part of what we're doing, and we work with the Defense Logistics Agency. You'll meet them later on today, but to ensure that not only do we have the right inventory, but the inventory is in the right place at the right time to allow us to be able to execute the missions that we need to do in support of our nation.
So I hear you outlining the elements of an important concept that I'm wondering if you might be able to talk about a little bit, and it's contested logistics. And so as we think about positioning, as we think about advantage, as we think about that mission assurance piece, can you talk about contested logistics and what that means for your bulk fuel mission?
Sure, yeah. So, for many years, we've enjoyed the ability to move logistics into position at our time and choosing. But I think the reality of the current situation and moving into the future is that logistics writ large will be contested in the future. So they're active, our adversaries will actively be looking to interdict the supply chains that we use to supply the needs for our military. And so part of our mission and looking at that supply chain is to ensure that we build that resiliency into it and that we build the redundancy required to be able to respond if we're interdicted or if there are challenges to that supply chain, giving us as many options as possible in future.
So the Department of Defense is not a creator or purveyor of fuel, a customer and an acquirer. So could you talk a little bit about how you think about working with industry and as you're actually getting the fuel to supply the mission, effective ways that you might encourage working together or other considerations that you think about as you're out to make sure that the mission is supplied and not going into DLA territory, which I know we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, so industry is a vital partner with the Department of Defense, and by extension, Transcom is always very interested in industry and industry involvement. We like to understand where industry is going and solicit that kind of conversation so we understand how industry looks at the problem sets because many of the problem sets, whether you call it contested logistics or just logistics, exist not just in the military but broadly. And so making those connections and building that understanding is really important to us. We like to pull in industry into our conversations and even recently into some of our exercises to have industry look at our problem set and say, okay, well, how would you look at this and help us to understand, how to respond or how to build redundancy and resiliency going forward.
And you've just introduced another concept that I don't know everybody has a baseline for. Can you talk through the types of things that you might exercise where you're inviting industry, and what are you looking at? What are you hoping that they'll consider, especially when it comes to the supply chain comments that you made just a little bit ago?
Yeah, so we, to be ready at our nation's calling, we rehearse and exercise, periodically, and so we, as part of that exercising, logistics is something both to physically, move our capabilities, but also to understand through simulations and other things. And so we pull in industry and others to help us when we look at that problem set in a contested environment to say, okay, well, how would we solve that problem if you looked at it through your perspective and your lens. And so that's always been good for us to have that conversation, and I think kind of baseline the understanding across the board so that we have kind of a common sight picture.
And in terms of security of that supply chain, I'm wondering if you can address any specific push points, considerations, or anything else that you are specifically and particularly vigilant about or focused as we think about reducing that challenge or strain point?
Yeah, so we really look to build a network to understand, not just to respond to a requirement. In other words, sometimes we've been very much built around waiting for kind of a demand signal to come before we start moving in anticipation. But as we've thought about this moving forward and really tried to build off of kind of our understanding of this mission, getting that fuel into position ahead of time or having it moving ahead of the no kidding demand signal is important. And so we want to continue to build that capability and understand using the tools that are coming, the predictive and anticipatory. I know AI gets thrown around a lot, but using the data that we know is out there to understand and be able to forecast and project so that we're ready when needed and have the capacity and capability in position should it be required.
So you bring up an interesting push and pull, which I know exists in the defense planning and budgeting world that I'm hoping you might address. You want to go and create options to make sure that you have that network, that redundancy, the availability of the resource. On the front end, it's requirements that drive what the site picture looks like in terms of that lay down, the budgeting, the planning. Could you give a little bit of insight into the requirement setting and the options preservation?
Yeah, so we traditionally, wait on requirements, but I think we know going into the future and with the tools and capabilities that are out there that we may be able to get more predictive in the future, and I think that's an important place that we should keep looking to build that capacity as we move forward, so that we aren't just waiting, and because of the time distance factors and what's required to pull in key stakeholders early, we have to get ahead of that a little bit. And I think with the data that's available now and the way that we're able to kind of use that going forward, it gives us an ability to kind of have those conversations with some clear analytical rigor behind it, so that we can, in the budgeting cycle, be a little bit more predictable and thereby make it less of a tough risk decision for senior leaders.
And we've talked a little bit before about how it is a much better position to be able to anticipate than be in response, but you're in the business of doing both. As we're engaging, and there's a good set of brains, eyes, and ears encircling us right now that consider different perspectives for how to engage, how to contribute, where energy security is actually a place that so many organizations, entities, and individuals have a stake in their own national security. I'm wondering if there is anything that you draw attention to in terms of how people who are traditionally outside the process but can contribute might think about meeting the needs of the Department of Defense.
Yeah, I think there's a natural synergy there, and I think, as you look at the global situation, we already know that we've got to build supply chains globally that are able to meet the demands, both, you name the industry. I know there's been a lot of change as we've kind of gone here and into the future, and so we have to build those relationships, build those bonds, understand each other, and I think one of the reasons we're here today is to ensure that we continue this conversation and build on the mutual understanding and work together to define the problem in a way that helps both the Department of Defense and industry understand each other.
All right. So as we close up our too brief time here, I feel like we could go in any direction and have this really deep conversation, which I hope we get to do at some point going forward. But in the meantime, just a couple of closing thoughts. What are you looking ahead towards? I come from the Department of the Navy. Your eyes are on the horizon. What are you focusing on there? Where are you headed? What are your targets?
Yeah, so we're very interested in making sure that we build a system, that we take the system and make it redundant enough to allow our senior leaders the maximum amount of options they've got and then the maximum amount of decision space to operate when it comes to fuel and energy. And so as we look to the future and keep building upon the network that we have, where and how do we continue to look for opportunities? We need to be, lockstep and understand what industry is doing. We need to have good, open, clear conversations and look at the global problem set together to be able to work through any kind of situations, crises that might arise.
All right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, for your insights, expertise, and perspective. I'll look forward to the next time, but in the meantime, so grateful to have the conversation with you.
Thanks again.